Hello, everybody. Welcome. Nice to see some friendly faces on camera. This live book club is brought to you by the Cannabis Coaching Institute. This meeting is also cannabis friendly. It has been a while since we've reminded people that this is a cannabis friendly event. We used to say it at the beginning of all of them, and then I think we just kind of assumed everybody knew. But if you feel like enjoying yourself with some cannabis, have at her. And Kim, thank you so much for being here. Corinne, Kim is one of our Cannabis Coaching Institute students, which makes, oh my God, it's so exciting. Y'all know how much I love like authors in general. And then to think like, oh my God, a fellow cannabis coach wrote this awesome book. That's so good. But you remember when this idea for this book was maybe just a baby, eh?
I believe I do. And Kim, you'll have to tell me if I'm correct about this. I know that some of you, we see a lot of graduates in here. So hello, I know you have some classmates in here from your class, which was, when was that, Kim? When did you graduate?
In 2018.
In
Been a while.
2018. It's been a while. Yeah. Okay. So in 2018, I felt like, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but it was at the end of your class. I thought you were saying as you were leaving in graduation call, you're like, I think I'm going to write a book. Was that then, or did you have that idea before that?
I think it would have been then, and then it
Okay.
sat for a while and it came up again. So
Okay,
I don't
cool.
actually remember saying that, but I probably would have said something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I remembered something about that. I was like, I think she mentioned this as she was leaving. She's like, I'm gonna write a book. And then I was like, and then sometime later, and I couldn't remember exactly how much time had passed, I was putting the book on a bookshelf in my bookstore, and I was like, whoa, that happened. She's like, I think I'm gonna do this, and now I'm holding this book. And now after reading this book, it is for how many of you have read this book? How many of you read Midlife Magic already? Yeah, is such an incredible comprehensive guide that is great for both beginners, for people who are going through midlife, for women in general. I mean, we will go through it. I think it is it's one of the best women-centric books that I've read about cannabis. And I was like, wow, it's crazy that this was an idea not that long ago. It really wasn't. And to hear you now say like I put it down and then picked it back up is really incredible. It's really a feat to be able to take how much information is out there about cannabis and how much we do know and tailor it for this audience. I'm just amazed by it. So I would love for you to give us a little more context about not just how you got to the point where you're like, I'm going to write this book, but how you how you got here in general. How did you come to cannabis? Just for those of you who didn't read the book, how did you come to cannabis, and how did you get to this work?
Well, I generally thank you for the lovely introduction. I appreciate that. I'm very excited, but I'm also feeling a little nervous, I have to be honest. So I might have to have a puff here to calm myself down. um, how did I come to cannabis? Okay, so I tell people generally that I came to cannabis late. And that's because, and if you've read the introduction of the book, you understand that I endured quite a severe illness. And while I was recovering, I just, I had nothing to rely on. I had no support, and outside of my regular doctor and eventually a naturopath. But cannabis was not even part of the picture, and nobody had mentioned it to me. And that was in 2016, 2017. But as we approached 2018 with legalization, I simply had curiosity. Like, I knew that this plant was going to be more prevalent and I wanted to be familiar with it. I'm doing the same with cryptocurrency right now. Like, I know it's the future, so I'm starting to learn about it. But I think it was, no, I definitely know it was. It was a magazine article, the O magazine, that I saw at the grocery checkout, and there was a headline that said high tea parties, and it caught my eye. And I bought the magazine and I took it home and I started reading about these events where women were coming together in these social, educational settings where they could connect with one another, connect with the plant in a really enjoyable and like a sisterhood kind of way. And I thought, I want to do this kind of thing. This sounds like a lot of fun. So cannabis is going to be legal and I want to be part of this. And then I eventually, I went down the rabbit hole and I found the Cannabis Coaching Institute, and I was learning more and more and more. And I started to dabble in the gray market a little bit because we were still a few months away from legalization. And I felt like I didn't have a medical reason to pursue the medical route. I was waiting for adult use cannabis to be available to me. So what else can I tell you? Sorry, that threw me a little bit. Yeah, so when I was dealing with my illness and I was struggling with extreme weight loss and insomnia and with pain and anxiety and all of that, I didn't have anything to support me. But as I was learning about cannabis and all of the things that it could do, like the magic and wonder of it all, I just started putting all these pieces together. Like it could have supported me with this and this and this and this, and I wouldn't have had to have suffered so much. But they say we have to go through what we go through, right? And if I hadn't gone through that, it's I don't know, it's possible that I wouldn't have had this inner drive to know something more about how to take care of myself in a natural way. Because honestly, the support that I got from my doctor when I was enduring such weight loss was to drink more protein shake. Like this was the kind of advice that I would get. Extremely malnourished, and not that cannabis would have helped with the fact that I had had a bowel resection and an ileostomy and all of that stuff, but just the fact that my doctor was giving me this really lame advice made me turn and look another way. And that's when I went down the naturopathic route. And then eventually, one door opens and another door opens and another door opens, and I ended up going down the cannabis path and meeting you. And yeah.
And we're so glad that you did come into CCI and become certified as a cannabis coach, and then go out there and be able to affect people in such a big way. This is something that we're always fascinated with, is that we teach the same thing to everybody, and yet you all take it and go do your own magic special thing with it. And your magic special thing was this book that, like Corinne said, speaks specifically to women and to women who are in their middle years. And if you're not there, like, we're heading there, right? Like it's coming for you. Diane said in the chat that I wanted to point out that she saw that exact same magazine and then had a similar like aha kind of moment with it. So it is so impactful when you're putting things like this in writing out in the world that people can see on coffee tables, on bookshelves, etc., that just even that can make such an impact. All right, we're going to open it up to questions. So again, if you have any questions, please just put up your digital or your real hand or pop them in the chat. We have one from Ladie, and she says, how is the transition with menopause and cannabis as far as maybe dealing with joint pain and fatigue? Can you talk specifically about how cannabis can be supportive for women as they're going through menopause?
So I found this really interesting as I was doing my research, the link between estrogen and anandamide. Are you familiar with this? So our bodies produce this natural cannabinoid called anandamide, the bliss molecule. And when we are in our regular cycles and we have higher levels of estrogen, the production of anandamide is also higher. So when we're going into perimenopause and menopause, and those the estrogen levels drop, the anandamide level drops as well, was my understanding. I might be throwing it off a little bit, but the ultimate conclusion is that as your estrogen levels drop, you have to consume a little bit more to make up for that. So women who are, younger and going through regular cycles will be affected by cannabis less than those of us who are dealing with lower levels of estrogen. But as far as the joint pain, I mean, that's inflammation primarily. So CBD, right? Consuming CBD for that, and also supporting that with the layering of topicals is really helpful. I always, I find that sleep is a really common question that comes up with people that I know. It's such an elusive thing, and not to sidetrack the pain question, but I generally talk about layering the medicine, right? So when we know that, for example, edibles take about 90 minutes or so to take effect, yet they have this long, sustained effect to keep you in that sleep, that's wonderful. But falling asleep might be a little bit harder, right? So having the edible earlier and then having a puff on a vape right before going to sleep to just help me doze off. So there's the layering. So with joint pain, I would say like just having that CBD protocol and then supporting it with topicals. Does that help answer the question?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much. I find we're so lucky to have books like this, because in medical literature, in studies, in literature in general, women are not really well represented. And specifically when we're thinking about cannabis, in fact, our needs as women change, not just when we're going through menopause, but when we're still having regular cycles. Your endocannabinoid system is fluctuating along with everything else. So it may be that when you are experiencing period cramps, that you need way more THC than you would think that you would need to address that. So just being aware that, just being a woman yourself at any age makes it so that cannabis is a constant dance that we're in with the plant. Yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you, Kim. All right. Jenna asked, oh, you got the replay. Awesome. Angel asked, I'm wondering how long did it take to figure out a regimen after your visit with your naturopath to help your conditions? Your cannabis journal must be an interesting read in itself.
So I turned to a naturopath before even considering cannabis. And I went that route because I was so nutritionally depleted that I needed some way to get nutrition into my body. And the only way that I could think of was a direct method through my veins. And so I went for intravenous vitamin therapy. We didn't talk about cannabis at all, my naturopath and I. It never came up. I don't know what it is, but it was like, it just didn't come up. And I didn't question, she never mentioned it. It just was not a thing. That would have been that was 2016 still. Yeah. So wasn't on her radar, wasn't on my radar. But after, so I essentially figured it out on my own. I didn't have the support of a naturopath. And just by going through the studies with CCI and that deep dive into cannabis and learning about the plant, learning about my body, learning about all of the compounds and everything. And I had already established a relationship with essential oils. They talk about cannabis being a gateway drug. Essential oils were my gateway to cannabis because of the terpenes. Like as soon as I started learning about terpenes, I was like, okay, this all makes so much sense. Thought I would throw that in there because it's pretty funny.
It's so true. Cannabis is the gateway drug to like lots of different things in CCI. Plus, we get here from different avenues as well. One of the questions that we had come in earlier was, could you expand more on your smokable herbs section? So in the book, you have this great chart of saying like, hey, if you're going to be inhaling cannabis in a vaporizer or inhaling it, burning it in a joint or a bong or a pipe or whatever, that you can add in different herbs to get that terpene profile, to get some of the medicinal benefits from those herbs. Can you talk more about that and what you recommend for people who are just getting started with that idea of adding things in with their cannabis blends?
Yeah, so I'd have to actually look at the chart to remember what I wrote about all of that. But when you think about, again, terpenes, so for instance, lavender is one of the herbs that I mentioned. And lavender has this terpene called linalool, which many of you are familiar with. Nice, calming, soothing terpene. Cannabis strains, a lot of cannabis strains have that as well. So it makes sense that incorporating that extra layer of terpene power into what you're consuming will just give the added benefit. I would have to look in the book, and I don't really want to be doing that right now. But yeah, so I have a friend, for example, she's just started exploring cannabis, and she wrote me very excitedly talking about how much she loves that blend with cannabis and lavender particularly. She also mentioned tobacco, and I said, we don't really do the mixing of tobacco in with our cannabis here. She's off in Europe, so I guess it's more common there. But yeah, so having cannabis as like your base. So for instance, when you're doing infusions, you have your base oil or your base alcohol that you're infusing your alcohol or your cannabis into. With the herbs, your strain, whatever it is, that's going to be your base, and then you can just sprinkle in a little bit of the other herbs. I would suggest just doing one at a time rather than doing a mix, because as soon as you start doing a mix and you're having an experience, you don't really know what is responsible or bringing about that particular experience. So start with, if you want it for sleep, start by adding some lavender in. And there's other ones I know that are sedating. I think it's the mullein, the catnip is. And actually, before I started exploring the inhaling of the herbs, I was infusing, like I was following CCI recipes and things, making infusions and for sleep. So I would add chamomile, catnip, lavender to my oil infusions. So it just made sense when I found out, oh, you can actually inhale these other herbs too. So it's just another way that we're benefiting from the plant and its natural synergistic relationships with the other plants of this amazing plant kingdom, right? So so one at a time, and then just track like you do when you're trying different strains or different ingestion methods, how much you're taking and when and how you're feeling before and how long until you're feeling different. And even starting, like if you had a favorite strain for sleep, if you know how that affects you, then add the extra layer of an herb to it just to see how it's enhanced. That's makes the most sense to me to do it that way. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you so much. For people who have come in a little bit late, welcome to our Cannabis Coaching Institute book club for the month with guest author Kim Sarsons, who wrote the awesome book Midlife Magic, which I can't show you because of my blur thing, but you know, it blurrily looks like this. There you go. It's on ebook. Corinne actually listened to the audiobook, which you read yourself. So well done on that. I know that Corinne and I are both really wondering about the whole journey of just being an author in general. Can you talk more about what it was like for you? You self-published this book. What's that like to go from, I'm really passionate about this plant and I want more people to know about it, to this. Now we're in book club with like a whole bunch of people who are being impacted and so excited. Mandy's in the chat. She's so excited. We're going to ask her question next. So tell me about that journey, please.
Well, I guess I said it when I graduated that I would do this thing. So here I am. You know, honestly, because of my life as a school teacher, I felt really, I felt like there was a big wall up. Like it was really hard for me to talk about cannabis openly. The fear factor and what's the school board going to think and what are the parents of my students going to think and all this stuff. It just played around in my head on repeat. And I had people telling me, Kim, you have to be careful. Don't let anybody know this about you and stuff. I thought it was ridiculous, but I still listened. But ultimately, I ended up meeting someone who was wanting to work with a cohort of eager authors who had something that they were really passionate about sharing. And she wanted to take us through this experience of self-publishing. And the timing was perfect. And I just thought, well, this is a way for me to reach people with this information where I'm kind of kept at a distance in a way. I don't know if that makes sense because ultimately it's on Amazon. Like that's a pretty huge that's a pretty huge audience. But it felt safer for me somehow. And I had been really trying to build something and it just wasn't fully coming to fruition for me, like as far as educating and coaching and all of that. So I felt like, well, it's time I'll put it down in a book. I have all of this work already started and I'll just start pulling from that. So with her guidance and everything and the amount of content that I had and the fact that I knew that this had to be out there and that if I didn't share it, like I wasn't doing my job very well. Like I went through this coaching institute. I acquired so much knowledge. My life has been impacted in a tremendous way. Like I used to be a crazy stress case, you know, doing all the things, and I'm not like that anymore. And I'm healthy. Like I don't take anything for myself except cannabis and my vitamins. That's it. No HRT. I don't take anything. But I felt like getting a book out it was time to do that. So she had a roadmap and milestones to hit and all of these different things. And so I stuck to that. And I think I'm one of I think only 3 of us completed. And there were about a dozen to begin. So not everybody finishes everything that they start, I have to say that. But I'm very proud that I did. And you know, just through the people that I had already supported with cannabis, I was telling them that I was doing this, I got the encouragement and just the, you know, the push to make it happen, even though there was that fear on the other side. Like that's a balancing act. Yeah, so it was probably several months actually to put it all together, and then I had to figure out the title, I had to figure out the cover art, I had to do all of these things. And then it came into the world initially as a Kindle, and then the paperback, and then the monster production of the audiobook. Oh my gosh, that's crazy. But yeah, I just felt like I needed to get this information out in my way, and that's why I call it in the beginning. I call it like it's a guide and it's a coach and it's a reference and it's all these things to help introduce women in midlife or earlier, even men, like anyone, to this plant in a mindful way, so that they can really take that ownership of that. It's self-care ultimately. But yeah, that's how that started. And then one thing led to another, now there are 3.
Yeah, tell
So
us
that's
about
pretty
your
fun.
other books. I'm going to drop a link to Midlife Magic in the chat right now in case you're watching this and you're like, I need that book, or I need it for my best friend, or I need it for all my best friends. I'll drop the link in. Can you tell us about your other books that you have there? Author Kim Sarsons.
Yeah. So as I was writing Midlife Magic, I was really feeling called to create a companion for it, an interactive companion, because there's so much information, and I try to be very encouraging, and I try to say, you know, when you start building your own cannabis plan and everything. You'll want to document all of this. And I thought that, well, there needs to be a place to document all of this. I don't want them to just go to some random book and just willy-nilly write everything down. I want to provide some structure. So the journal, which I call Elevated Expansion, Cannabis Companion Journal and Workbook for Women, came to be because of that. I just felt like it needs something else. It can stand alone, but it needs something else so it feels more complete and supportive. So it's got everything from like a glossary and sort of establishing where you are now before cannabis. It's got journaling prompts. It's got dosing pages, spots for recipe collection. I have so many books that are scattered all over the place that have all of this stuff. I thought as well, like there needs to be some place to house it all so that there's a go-to reference. And then, so that's this one. And then the last one, which I just did in December, is called Highly Inspired, and I call it a women's creative self-care retreat. So that's primarily a coloring book, as well as journaling and dosing. So things like this.
I don't think Corinne knew you had another book out.
That's the back. You didn't know I had this one? I know I'm not very good at marketing myself.
I did not know. I'm a bookstore owner, Kim. You got to tell me when there's a new book.
I know. You know what's really cool about this is it has a foreword from a doctor. It has a foreword from Dr. Oga. You know Dr. Oga in Texas?
Sure do. Yep.
Yeah. So she crafted the foreword here because she actually prescribes coloring and cannabis for her patients. So that was very exciting to get that.
Thank goodness somebody made a cannabis coloring book so that she has that to prescribe to her. I just can't get over sometimes how cool it is to think that like all the different steps that it took to get you here. And because you took all those steps, we have Mandy in the chat who says, I feel like I found your book serendipitously. I'm 33, going through medically induced menopause for breast cancer treatment. I'm wondering if you can recommend any brands or distributors in Canada for infused vaginal moisturizers. I've found an infused lube, but I'm looking for something more, and I'm not very confident in making my own, although I did read your book. Or should I just mix full spectrum oil with coconut oil? Yeah, lots of great questions. And Mandy, make sure that you also, and for everybody on Thursday at 1 o'clock Eastern, we are having a live Q&A on cannabis for sex. And we're going to talk about all these types of things like more in depth. But Kim, can you talk more about this question?
Well, there's a brand that just came out with suppositories, but forget what they're called. Do you know?
No, but you got the honorary certificate. You graduate from CCI again because you said suppositories on a live call. I don't know if that was part of your class. Sorry, it's kind of a CCI inside joke. No, suppositories. Yeah.
Prairie, is it Prairie something?
Prairie Naturals? Maybe?
Yeah, I think it's Prairie Naturals in Canada has suppositories.
Yeah, and I would say like, just make your own.
Thanks for saying that, Kim. Yeah,
well, yeah,
suppositories are expensive.
And you don't get much. Like with anything, you don't get much. It's much better to make your own. Edibles are 10 milligrams. I know people who take 350 milligrams to deal with fibromyalgia and Crohn's and things like that. Like that would be 35 gummies at a time, right? To get that dose. So I understand the like trepidation around making your own, but I think it's the best way to go.
And
then you have control over everything, right?
And you're in Canada, Mandy, and there, like, we have access to concentrates. You can get an RSO type concentrate, so that really all you have to do is warm up your syringe that's got the concentrate and warm up your carrier oil. And maybe, Kim, you want to weigh in on like a good carrier oil. And then you just squirt it in and put it into suppository molds. Like, it is really simple. If you're thinking about like a recipe, this isn't a recipe. This is like combining two things and
The
putting them into a
process, yeah.
mold. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, coconut oil, because it can harden, be the best.
I'm just going to put it out there because I have to every time, because I get so worried. Coconut oil degrades condoms. So if you're
Oh,
using,
right.
this as a lube, and using condoms as protection, you got to like figure something else out there. All right. I'm going to go back to questions in the chat. I think it was Maureen. Yeah. Maureen wanted to know, were you a writer before this? Is this your first foray into writing?
Well, I've written a lot, but mostly academic writing, because as a school teacher, and then I did my master's degree. So I've done a lot of writing in that sense. I've never published, I've never written a book. I've written a lot of lesson plans and report card comments over my career. Like, so I can be very diplomatic in my writing. And I have to be very precise, because if there's any sort of little error or, yeah. So no, thank you though for that question, because that feels good. Yeah, I'd say though I'd spent quite a lot of my career and adult life doing some sort of professional type of writing.
Is there more in the hopper for you? Is there another baby book inside of you?
I don't know at this point. Yeah, I don't know.
All right.
Any idea? Oh, actually, yes. Hold on.
There it is. Okay, everybody, you're now on the call where Kim tells us about her next book, which will be out in months.
Needed a moment. Sorry. Okay, so a few months ago, I got this idea that my story is one singular story about my journey to cannabis and how it supported me and such. There are countless stories out there of women whose lives have been transformed, or somehow some transformation has been catalyzed by their engagement or their willingness to say yes to cannabis and the ensuing exploration and experimentation. And I know there's people on this call whose lives have been impacted tremendously by this plant. Yeah. And so I thought I want to gather these stories, gather these women, and create a collaborative book. So that is something that I'm presently working. I can't believe I said I didn't know, but that is something that I really want to see happen this year. And so I'm seeking interested writers who would want to come together with my support to put together their cannabis story. What was life like before? What were you enduring? How did you show up in the world? What made you turn to cannabis? And how is your life different now on the other side? We've crossed the bridge. What is life like now? And share those stories, because the more diverse the collection of stories that are out there of real people, real women who are just living their lives, yet have chosen to incorporate this plant for their self-care and for their overall health and well-being. These stories need to be told. And so I really want to be a part of making that happen. So yeah,
how do people get in touch with you if they have a story to share?
They're interested. So I initially started sending out a Google form. That was way back when I got this idea. Now I would say just email me. Just email me. If you feel compelled to share your story and you know you have a story. Everyone's got a valid story. Everybody does. I don't want people to think like, well, my story isn't good enough. Every story is valid and needs to be told, because it just magnifies the power of this plant, and it will hopefully incite change, right? Like, and really propel the changes in laws, not only like nationally across the US, finish up with the rest of those states, but the rest of the world. Like, there's no reason why this plant should not be accessible. There's no reason.
Especially when we consider that it was stories, lies that led us to this point, like it's so important for us to be able to be as loud as we can, however we're comfortable with, and maybe even a little bit more than that, so that other women can see themselves in each story and have their own path to healing that wasn't available before. So yeah, being able to talk about this.
Yeah, I also think that there's something that it's just so much more powerful in so many ways than sharing the facts about cannabis, right? For those of you who've had the experience of talking about the endocannabinoid system until someone's eyes glaze over right in front of you, just did it today. I think back and I'm like, if I would have shared my story and the stories of others, if I would have started there instead of going, look, these are the facts, then maybe that person would have gone, well, how does that work? So there's that invitation piece that is so compelling with story. And so I'm excited. I mean, I just 4 books, Kim, chill. No, I'm just kidding. Like, don't chill. Don't chill. Do the opposite of chill. I'm so excited. This is rad.
Well, I'm thinking that this will be the first, maybe a series. We'll see how much interest
14
there
books.
is. 14? Okay.
14. John.
First one's going to publish in September. There you go. So contact me if you're interested.
Nailed it. I know for sure, like, because I'm looking at the women who I know on this call, and there's some women here who credit cannabis with saving their lives. Like, this is beyond, yeah, this is big stuff we're talking about here. So thank you so much. John in the chat says, I'm very happy that cannabis has helped you recover from your absolutely scary health crisis. I found how you presented all these topics and complex issues to be very effective. So impressed. Yeah. Well done.
Thank you, John. I appreciate that.
Mandy's going to make her own suppositories. So we've convinced her. Awesome. That's great. Stephanie says, your book spoke to me in so many ways. I'm an educator, librarian, and I too have felt that I must be careful with my sharing. I've had so many people who are eager to hear my story and what led me to CCI. I started a business and recently shared my story to be published. Congratulations, Stephanie. That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Kim and I are both elementary school teachers in Canada. I had the exact same thing. I'm sure that Corinne remembers from my class. Like, I had one teacher in my head who I knew if I told him I was going to be a cannabis coach, he was going to he was going to come at me, and I wasn't going to be able to handle it. And when I finally got the guts to tell him, he was like, oh, that's pretty cool. And then walked away. Like, he could have cared less, like all the stories I had about that. So yeah, again, being able to speak out loud about this is so important. All right, I invite you to put up your real or digital hand or pop your question in the chat. I'm going to pull up one that we had come in earlier. Oh, yes, this one. I wish my background wasn't blurred, but then you'd see how messy it was. So when I read this, I underlined it, and then I went to get a highlighter because I underlined in pencil, and I was like, no, this isn't enough. Went to get a highlighter, and then I was writing on the side. I was like, what? With question marks and stuff. Since I learned at CCI that one of the quickest ways to get the benefits of cannabis is to hold a tincture underneath your tongue, or an oil, a cannabis infused oil underneath your tongue, and let the THC or CBD seep in through your, mouth membranes. And, within about 20 minutes, you should be feeling relief. So I dutifully held oil under there, never, ever felt anything. Neither did my coaching partner. We were like, this is bunk. So I've been always skeptical about sublingual tinctures. And then you write in your book, dry out your mouth and hold it under there for a super long time. And it does actually make a difference. I want to know how you got there. How did you figure out that that was the key to making sublinguals work?
How did I figure that out?
Yes.
Gosh, probably a combination of things. I didn't journal my whole process. I think Tinctures were one of the first things I attempted to make myself. So I had that opportunity to experiment with those. And I think it goes back as well to having used oregano oil, which is brutal, burns like crazy, but still just holding it there, holding it there, holding it there. And then I think I just validated it. I did further research and found enough support for that idea that I thought, well, I need to let people know this, because the what is it called there? That the tissue inside of the mouth is the faster access point to the bloodstream than is swallowing, right? So if you're holding it just for 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 40 seconds, whatever, and then swallowing what's left over, well, it's going to have to go through your digestive system, and you only will have absorbed a little bit through the tissues of the mouth. So just holding it there longer makes more sense. And then eventually, I mean, you have to swallow eventually.
I'm curious actually if you've had a chance to sit with like that impact and that ripple, because we've gotten several messages since we put out that we were doing this book of people going, I'm on page 16 and this is already changing my life. And obviously people are putting it in the chat who aren't from your class or who aren't from CCI, who this has impacted. Have you had those experiences as an author, especially in working with cannabis, where you're like, oh shoot, those words like are changing lives, like people are reading this and it's actually doing something in the world? Have you, not to put you on the spot, like, hey, you should experience that right now, but like, have you had that experience already?
Not really, because I've had most, like I sell my books, I give my books away. A lot of them go through Amazon, so I'm not in touch with the readers, and I don't hear back from a lot of the readers to know this. It would be wonderful. I should probably set up some sort of avenue so that that can happen, because it's a really valuable conversation to have, and getting me thinking about some of the work I need to do. But I do hope that, it is having that impact, because that was the intent. It wasn't just to tell a story, it was to have an impact and really encourage people to take their health and wellness into their hands and not be afraid of this. Yeah, I look forward to hearing back from more people. So I'll figure out some way to do that. Just email me, Kim Sarsons at Gmail. Simple.
Meech says you're affecting not only midlife folks, their mid-30s, and resonated with your entire story. So thank you for your words. It really is impactful.
When does midlife really begin? When does it
Another one here, they listened to 6 hours of your audiobook today. So comprehensive. Love this book. Your reading is so captivating as well. I ordered the print copy while waiting for the meeting to start. I did the same thing. I bought the Kindle and then I was like, no, I need to underline this puppy. So yeah, thank you so much.
So what was the question about the audiobook? Corinne, did you have a particular question about the
I don't have it.
audiobook?
No, I'm so glad you did it. I was amazed when it came out, because in my bookstore, I was having this experience that I have often where I get so excited about something and I'm like, I'm going to read this book. And then I start talking to someone about it in my little town, and then they buy the book out of my hands and I go, no. And that happened a couple of times with Midlife Magic. And then your audiobook came out, and listening to you deliver the material, you're just so well paced, and your voice is obviously amazing. Like it's made to be listened to for 6 hours. Like I can listen to it for so long, and it was so well done. I've listened to a lot of audiobooks and it was just really well done, especially for cannabis, where it can get, you're like, okay, this is more, it's just a lot of information. I think it really allowed me to tune into how good you are at layering factual information and guidance, that like, hey, I'm going to hold your hand and walk you through this, and then here are the facts behind it, and here's a story that's going to guide you through this. It just made it really easy to listen to and really easy to read. And so it just well done on it. I don't really have a question. How long did it take you to do that? Forever and ever? Or was it, yeah.
Oh, it was yeah, it was an ordeal. I did it in my walk-in closet right back here. I did it into my phone. I recorded it into my phone, into GarageBand. And then a friend of mine hosted like a small book party for me. And at that party, I met a woman whose son is an audio guy, an audio engineer. So I started sending him my audio files, and I hadn't even met him face to face, and he did the whole thing for me. But it took a long time. Took a long time. And I had to do one chapter complete at a time because I didn't know how to put them together or how to make sure that they would line up well. So yeah, some chapters are really long. It's hard. It's hard
So
work.
you sat in your closet and read an entire chapter at a time and then sent it to someone, they edit it and put,
Well,
thank
he didn't
you.
edit. He didn't edit. He just adjusted the sound quality so that it was suitable to the standards for Audible.
Can you make sure that
Yeah.
everyone knows that you have that? Like, not shut the fuck up about that one? Because I think that, you were saying earlier you did that, like, I'm terrible at marketing, but like that one in particular, you worked so hard at that and it's such an enjoyable experience. Like, tell people. Also, it's an audiobook. Hey, are you driving to work? It's an audiobook. You should hear my book. It's also, you should like hear it. Just, you don't even have to read it. Just put it on the audiobook because it's an audiobook. Like, don't shut the fuck up about the fact that it is, because it's really well done. I can't believe that that was the production. I imagined you, and listening to it, I'm sure a few of you also listened to it. I just imagined you in this like studio, like you're like in front of the boom mean mic situation. Yeah, I'm amazed. Wow, way to
I
go,
bought a
Kim.
baby mic about that big that sticks into the end of my phone. And I went to one of those workshops at the Apple store. They do free workshops that teach you how to do different things. And the workshop was start a podcast from your iPhone. And I thought, start a podcast. Okay, well, I could do an audiobook from my phone. So I went to the workshop and learned how to do that and then just started at it. I hung up a big fleece blanket on the bare side of my walk-in closet and had all the cushioning of the clothing on the other side. And I sat in there through the hot summer because it was brutally hot and I couldn't have I don't have air conditioning. So it was a test for sure. But as soon as I got it done, I was like, release, let it go. But I'm glad you're enjoying it. Yeah, I don't think there's many cannabis audiobooks out there.
There are not. That's true.
There are not.
Thank you for your dedication to that, right? Like, this is something special about this plant that makes people sit in their hot closets with blankets in the middle of summer and like talk about this stuff so other people can know. I sometimes feel like we work for the plant instead of the other way around. Lisa in the chat says, I love your book. Kim, thank you so much. I'm 63 and interested in brain health and cannabis and dementia especially. Do you have any thoughts on that?
So basically the science says that cannabis should not be consumed before the age of 25 because the frontal lobe is still developing, the brain is still developing. But later in life, it has neurogenerative and neuroprotective qualities. So everybody our ages and up should be consuming this. I personally don't have much experience in this realm. I would have to do deeper research, but yeah, as far as the brain goes, the stories that cannabis makes you not so bright and such is to be taken with a grain of salt because yeah, there's studies out there, right, that talk about the neuroplasticity of the brain and the neurogenerative properties. I imagine there have been studies. Have there been studies done? You know? Yeah.
We have lots of promising, not clinical
Yeah.
necessarily research, but lots of promising research about the neuroprotective effects of cannabinoids on the brain. We were just talking, I'm going to say it, with Dr. Bonnie Goldstein a couple of weeks ago. And she was talking about once you're already suffering from a neurodegenerative disease, cannabis can help with the symptomology, but that we should be considering this as a protectant as we get older so that we can avoid having these issues in some capacity. So yeah, lots of interesting stuff for you to check out, Lisa. Check out Cannakeys, CANNA keys.com. If you're looking for research on cannabis in general, they do a fantastic job of compiling everything that's out there and then giving you a synopsis of it and letting you know, maybe some of the limitations of the studies. So it's definitely worth it if you want to really dive deep into cannabis science. Meech says it was amazing. He or she is talking about your audiobook. Like Corinne said, the pacing in your voice are so soothing. I read the book first and got the audiobook for free. So it was a nice symbiosis. Oh, yeah. And Lisa says there are some studies from Harvard and Johns Hopkins. Perfect. All right. I want to, just as we're closing up here, let everybody know about the next couple of book clubs. Okay. Full disclosure on this. I chose books for this book club that I really love and adore. And maybe I have my own particular nerdy bent because we're going to get a little bit nerdy starting next month. Next month is the medical cannabis primer. I don't have it here to show you, unfortunately. And my understanding that in Canada, it's harder to come by than it is in the States. So if you're looking for that book and you're in Canada, I'm not 100% sure what to tell you right now on this call, but I wanted to let everybody know that, again, the author is going to be with us. And so her book is phenomenal for giving you a really foundational look at the science behind cannabis. And what I love about it, why I picked this book, is because it's full of charts and graphs and visual representations of cannabis science and how it works. And for lots of people, that's better than, than just a page of words. So please make sure that you join us for that chat, even if you're not able to get your hand on it. And then I've been warning you about this since, the beginning. Our final book club in April is Curious About Cannabis by Jason Wilson. And I read the volume 2, which is about this big, but now there's volume 3, which is about this big. So he's a fantastic cannabis science educator. He does a great job of explaining really, really nerdy stuff in a way that lots of people are able to access, and he does get deep into everything in this book. So again, if that's not your idea of a fun way to spend your next couple of months, come to the book club anyway. Jason's great about answering questions live, and we would love to see you. So I'll drop a link. No, you're all here. So y'all have the link. I don't know. I'll drop a link anyway so that you can come and join us over the next couple of months as we continue on with book club. Angel asked if I suggest to get the color version of the big book. I would actually. It's an expensive book as is, so a little bit of extra expense I think is worth it, especially for this one. He has lots of great pictures of the plant in there in particular. So yeah. Kim, thank you so much for coming on. I know we both are super grateful for that. So thank you.
Thank you for the invitation. I appreciate it. And thank you everyone for showing up this evening. It's nice to see such big numbers, 33 people in the house. Woo, woo, woo.
On a Monday evening. This is how we like to party. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much, Kim. I saw all of your eyes light up as soon as Andrea said, we're talking about cannabis and sex on Thursday. We were joking about, we were talking about the most popular workshops that she's run, and she said cannabis and sex. And I was like, well, that's interesting because we're coming up on on this holiday, this Valentine's Day situation. Let's talk about it. Let's just throw it out there. And it's been so funny. I mean, that idea that sex sells is just so true. Like, you guys want to come talk about cannabis and anxiety? Want to come talk about this thing? Sex. And everybody's like, okay, we'll be there. What time is it? Oh, it's on a Thursday at 1. Okay, I'm gonna just cancel everything for that day and be there. It's been really great to see people get so excited about that. That's this Thursday, and every Thursday, because Andrea and I work so dutifully for this plant that is our boss. We show up every week and we talk about this stuff as much as possible. So make sure that you put it in your calendars. We'll also send out replays as long as we made sense on the entire call, then we'll send out a replay. If it goes off the rails, you're never going to see it. So you might as well come live if you really want to see the blooper reel. So that's it for up in the next couple of weeks in terms of meetings. We've got book club is next month, and we've got Thursday Q&As. And also, for those of you who aren't a CCI graduate already, I know so many of you already are, please join us. You got until tomorrow. What is it, tomorrow? Tomorrow at midnight. Yeah. And if you haven't already and you qualify for a scholarship, go ahead and get those applications in. Like Andrea said, I'll probably keep them open until tomorrow at noon because people slide in late, and then I'm like, no, I'm closing the door. And then I see these amazing stories about cannabis and people who really want to be out there doing this work. So just get it in as soon as you can, because we really have to close these doors. We really have to, start school. You can't be slackers. You got to show up. We got to go. We got to do this stuff. Thank you so much, Kim. Thank you for being part of this community, and thank you for creating so much, and for also dutifully working for this plant. And thank you all for being here tonight. Can't wait to see you next month.